Hi, so last time is we talk about the what they call transport mechanisms, on which when we talk about transport mechanisms, it can be classified into three. We have here the what they call passive transport, active transport, and the bulk transport. And for today, we will talk about the second type of transport and the third one, which is active and bulk transport. So bakit kaya siya tinawag na active transport? Di ba po kapag sinasabi natin passive transport, it does not require the use of energy. Pero kapag sinabi natin active transport, it requires the use of energy. So active transport is a type of transport mechanism that relies on the expense or use of cell energy, on which this energy comes from the what they call ATP or adenosine triphosphate. So why on the first place kailangan natin ng tinatawag nating active transport? So the expenditure is needed to move the molecules against their concentration gradient to maintain internal conditions. So mostly kasi meron mga parts or meron mga molecules or meron tayong mga ions na hindi basta-basta nakakapag-penetrate doon sa tinatawag nating mga channels and also sa tinatawag nating plasma membrane. Now, dito po sa active transport, makakadaan po ang mga ions and different molecules through the use of energy coming from the adenosine triphosphate or ATP. One good example of active transport is we have the what we call sodium-potassium pump. So ano ba ang meron dito sa sodium-potassium pump natin? So take note of this one. So hindi po basta-basta pwede magamit yung tinatawag yung ATP. Pero paano ba siya nagagamit ngayon? Okay? So, nagagamit po ang ATP through the what we call phosphorylation. Sir, ano po ba yung tinatawag nating phosphorylation na yun? So, take note of these terms. We have here ATP. Again, ATP po yan. So, yan yung nanggaling sa inyong mga mitochondria. Now, dun sa ATP na yon, i-attach niya yung sarili niya dito sa tinatawag nating mga proteins. Now, kapag po in-attach ngayon nitong ATP, yung kanyang sarili, so, matatanggal po ang isang phosphate sa kanya. Therefore, yung ATP niya po, magiging siyang adenosine diphosphate. Now, yung pong phosphate na yon, yun po yung may dala ng energy. At yun po yung reason kung bakit bumubukas yung ating channel or yung ating carrier. We have different classifications of active transport. First one is we have the active transport according to energy. First one is we have the primary active transport, on which it primarily uses the what we call ion pumps. Now, paano po ba nangyayari ang tinatawag nating primary active transport? So, one of the examples of primary active transport ay na-mention po natin kanina, yung tinatawag nating sodium-potassium pump. So, paano po ba nangyayari yung tinatawag nating sodium-potassium pump? So, take a look at this illustration po. Okay? Kung mapapansin nyo po dyan, meron kayong ATP. Now, ito pong ATP na to, i-attach po niya yung kanyang sarili dito po sa tinatawag nating pumps or ion pumps. So, once na in-attach po ngayon ng ATP yung kanyang sarili doon sa tinatawag po nating ion pumps, matatanggal po ngayon ang isang phosphate. Okay? Kumbaga, ito yung susi na magbubukas sa door, on which yung door nyo po, yun po yung pump nyo. Now, kapag po nandun na mismo yung tinatawag nating phosphate dun sa mismong pump, mag-iiba po ngayon ang kanyang shape. On which, kapag nag-iba po yung shape ng tinatawag po nating ion pump, i-attach po ngayon ng tinatawag nating sodium yung kanyang sarili doon. Ano po ngayon ang mangyari? Again, i-attach po ng sodium yung kanyang sarili dun sa tinatawag nating ion pump. Now, kapag na-attach na po ng sodium yung kanyang sarili dito po sa tinatawag nating ion pump, bubukas po ngayon ang ion pump, on which lalabas naman po ngayon ang tinatawag nyong sodium. Now, ano ngayon ang mangyari after nun? Kung mapapansin nyo po, nandun pa rin yung tinatawag po nating phosphate. Now, ito pong phosphate ngayon na naka-assign, again, yung pong phosphate ngayon na naka-assign, soon matatanggal din po yan. Now, bago siya matanggal ngayon, so meron po ngayon na naman mag-a-attach sa tinatawag nating ion pumps, on which mag-a-attach po dyan yung tinatawag nating potassium. On which, once na nag-attach na po ang potassium ngayon, instead na pumasok siya or lumabas siya, papasok po ngayon siya sa loob ng cell. On which, kapag pumasok na po yan sa loob ng cell, matatanggal po yung phosphate. Now, Ano ngayon ang mangyayari dito sa natanggal nating phosphate? So, ito po natanggal na phosphate na to, magre-react po yan sa tinatawag nyong adenosine diphosphate, yung natanggalan kanina, on which magsasama po ulit yan. And again, makaka-form po yan na tinatawag nating ATP. Yan po ang tinatawag nating primary active transport. Next one is we have the coupled or the co-transport. So this method of transport is when one protein shuttles two different molecules across the membrane in the same direction. Mostly nangyari po to sa tinatawag nyong mga symport na proteins. So tignan niyo po itong pangalawang picture po natin dyan. Yan, so this one is what we call symporter, on which instead po na isa, kaya nga siya tinawag na coupled, ayan, dalawa po ang papasok dyan. Okay, ano ba ang papasok dyan kapag sinabi nating coupled or co-transport? Papasok po dyan yung glucose at papasok din po dyan yung sodium. Okay? Yung po yung tinatawag nyong coupled or co-transport. Next one is you have your what we call counter-transport. Diba kanina kapag sinabi natin coupled, sabay na papasok yan. Pero kapag sinabi naman po natin counter-transport, so this method of transport occurs when one transporter moves two different molecules across the membrane in different directions. Ito po yung tinatawag yung mga uniport and antiport. Now, dito po sa mga antiport or antiport natin, meron mga molecules na lalabas at meron din po mga molecules na papasok. Ang kaibahan lang po dito is yung mechanism na nagpapagalaw sa kanya. Kasi mostly dito hindi na po mga ion pumps. Again, hindi na po mga ion pumps. Pero dito po, tinatawag na po natin yung mga symporters, uniporters, and antiporters. So that is for the what we call counter-transport. Next one is you have your bulk or vascular transport. Kapag sinabi nating bulk, kapag sinabi nating vascular, more on, di ba? Kapag sinabi natin mga vascular tissue, it is the one responsible for the transportation. Very good. Other than that, kapag sinabi nating bulk, more on malakihan, maramihan. On which, di ba, kapag mga molecules yung dumadaan, kapag active and passive transport, mostly maliliit lang mga yan. Mostly isa nga molecule. Pero kapag malalaki po ang mga molecules natin, dadaan po yan or matatransport po yan through the what we call bulk or vascular transport. So I have here the different categories of the what we call vascular or bulk transport. So it can be divided into two. So we have here the what we call endocytosis and exocytosis. So kapag po sinabi nating endo, very good. So yan po yung nangyari sa loob ng tinatawag nating cell. Okay, inside po yan. So it is a process by which cells take in endocytosis. Okay, take in substances from the outside of a cell by engulfing them in a vesicle. Just for example, on this illustration, we have here a bacterium on which this bacteria was engulfed by the cell. On which kapag in-engulf po yan, so mababalot po ngayon yung bacteria natin sa tinatawag nating vesicle, on which papasok po yun sa loob ng cell. Example po yan na tinatawag nating endocytosis. We have different categories or types of endocytosis. First one is we have the what we call pinocytosis, known as the cell drinking. So para hindi po kayo malito kapag sinabi po natin pinocytosis, sounds like inom. Therefore, your cell is drinking something. So when you are drinking something, it means that you are taking in a fluid. Ganon din po sa mga cell. So it takes in fluid and also solute. And also, di ba, hindi lang yan matatapos kung puro inom-inom lang. Char. Kailangan din pong kumain ng tinatawag natin mga cells. So kakain po yan through the what we call endocytosis. During the process of phagocytosis, kabaliktaran po yan ng pinocytosis. So, phagocytosis is the what we call cell eating. So, a good example of the what we call phagocytosis is when a cell engulfs a bacteria. Okay? So, it takes in larger substances, such as a bacteria. Just for example, siguro ng mga bata kayo, ayan, naranasan nyo na masugatan, and minsan naranasan nyo na din na magkaroon ng tinatawag nating nana. Ano ba yung tinatawag nating nana na yon? So, ibig sabihin po, kapag meron po kayong formation na tinatawag yung pus or yung mga nana, ibig sabihin po, meron mga cells po na lumaban sa mga bacteria. So, nangyayari po karaniwan or na-form po ang tinatawag nating pus kapag po in-engulf ng isang neutrophil yung isang bacteria. On which kapag na-engulf po niya yun po, ma-form po ang tinatawag nating pus or yung nana. Lastly is you have the receptor-mediated endocytosis. So, receptor proteins, as you can see, ito po mga mukhang mga screw dyan. Ayan, so receptor proteins on the cell surface are used to capture a specific target molecule. And kung mapapansin nyo po, ayan, so di po kasi gumagana yung dito, yung animation. So, you can watch or you can use the PowerPoint po on which you can see the animation on the description box. Okay? So, kung mapapansin niyo po, kung ano po yung shape ng molecule, ganun din po yung shape ng ating mga receptor. Kasi po, ito po yung tatanggap niyan. Now, ito po mga receptor na nakikita niyo dyan, ito pong pinopoint ko dyan, ito po, yung mga receptor na yan, once na in-attach po ngayon nila yung kanyang sarili dun sa object natin dyan. So, unti-unti, ito pa pong mga natitira dyan na mga receptor proteins, i-attach din po nila yung sarili na doon. And also, mag-form po yan ng circle. And once na nag-form na po yan ng circle, unti-unti, ma-engulf na po nung cell yung object na yon. Okay? That is receptor-mediated endocytosis. So, aside from the what we call endocytosis, di ba? Meron din tayo tinatawag na exocytosis. So, we must know that hindi lahat, again hindi po lahat kailangan ng cell. And meron din mga parts na kailangan niyang ilabas. Particularly more on ito yung mga toxins, ito yung mga waste products. So, on the process of exocytosis, exo, tandaan niyo po, papunta sa labas. So, it is process by which the cells release particles from within the cell into the extracellular space or the space outside the cell. That is the what we call exocytosis. And today, you have learned about the different types of transport mechanisms. We have the what we call active transport, passive transport, and the bulk or vascular transport. So kapag po sinabi natin passive transport, it does not require the use of energy. Kapag sinabi naman natin active transport, it requires the use of energy. And lastly, kapag po sinabi nating bulk or vascular transport, more on transportation of large materials on which it can be categorized into two. So we have the endocytosis on which it is the transport of materials into the cell or inside the cell or going inside the cell. And lastly is we have exocytosis, the transport of materials to the extracellular space or outside the cell. So those are the what we call transport mechanisms. And you can observe these transport mechanisms in your everyday life. Now, for your activity is answer transport mechanism. And for the instructions, kindly read your ELMS.